So welcome to each one of you who have joined us on this Saturday afternoon to explore this much needed topic of cultivating compassion for ourselves, brought to us by the Brahma Kumaris. My name is Raksha and I will facilitate today's session. And I will tell you a little bit about the Brahma Kumaris, and then we will explore this topic more deeply, and I'll introduce you to our guest speaker. So today's topic, cultivating compassion for ourselves. And the Brahma Kumaris is the organization that has brought this topic to us. The focus of the Brahma Kumaris is to help people explore their inner qualities as a basis of developing their highest level of personal integrity and self-mastery. This unique method of education in human, moral, and spiritual values was initiated in 1936 and is currently being offered in 130 countries. The university offers free courses in meditation and spiritual understanding, as well as lectures and seminars in higher human values, positive thinking, stress management, and personal management skills in all sectors of communities. And so today's topic, I'm sure a much needed topic. And whilst we have individuals on Zoom, we also have many on YouTube as we explore this topic. And I was just thinking, in the current time, with the multitude of stressors in all domains of our life, we have become highly self-critical. Anxiety, negative thinking, self-inflicted anger, and depression is the order of the day. I was just reflecting last week with a friend about how we are really our greatest torturers. I know this is quite a harsh word to use, but really, if one has to observe the kind of thinking patterns that we have, and if one observes the situations in the lives of our loved ones or of humanity in general, there's really a high level of very self-critical thinking. And just last weekend in a retreat, a participant mentioned that we will never dare let anyone speak to us in the manner we occasionally speak or treat ourselves. And in South Africa, coming from a background of great instability and social challenge, we are undeniably, you will all agree, a deeply resilient population, a population that bounces back, but a population that needs to develop and cultivate and grow our self-compassion. Like we would, I was thinking, to a dear loved plant, nurturing it back to life with patience, care, and love. And who better to explore this topic with us than Dr. Sarah Eagger. Dr. Sarah Eagger is a retired consultant psychiatrist in London and is a certified mindful self-compassion teacher. And she has been running self-compassion retreats with the Brahma Kumaris, for the Brahma Kumaris over the last few years, and many have taken a lot of benefit. She was an NHS consultant and an honorary senior clinical lecturer at Imperial College for 20 years. Sarah is chair of the Janki Foundation, a UK-based charity that promotes spirituality in healthcare, Sarah is very committed to an approach that enhances peace, love, and compassion for the benefit of healing oneself and others. She is a practitioner of Raj Yoga meditation with the Brahma Kumaris for 40 years. And personally, being in the field of health, I have enjoyed the benefits of many lectures, seminars, workshops, dialogues with Sarah. And she's really an image of deep compassion for humanity and a gentle giant that does great things and who has used her personal and vocational experiences to help others develop their inner strengths and capacity to meet current day challenge. And so I invite Sarah now, and she will explore with us over the next hour or more. And just of note to the participants on YouTube and Zoom, if you could, whilst listening to Sarah, if you could share your questions that you would want to pose to her on the Zoom and on YouTube chat. And I will then ask them, because after she shares, we will have 20 minutes for questions and answers. And so that will be your opportunity to ask your personal questions. So do write that in the chat on Zoom or the chat on YouTube. And so welcome, Sarah, from London. And it's really our honor to have you with us. And so wonderful to see your face after many, many months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raksha. That's a lovely introduction. And yes, we've known each other for some time. So we're now able to see each other virtually. I'm just trying to work out my screen view because I've got Brahma Kumara South Africa as my main picture. So I don't know how to get it on just speaker view. Anyway, as long as you can all see me and all hear me, let me know if there's any trouble with the sound or anything like that in the chat box.
Yes, it's all very clear. We can see you very well. Thanks.
Thanks. You know what this technology is like, and we've often all seen people struggling a bit. It's all been a steep learning curve for all of us. But how are you all doing? Because I can see that, you know, COVID's been such a challenge for everyone in the world, and especially in South Africa now, I can see that you're having a lot of cases. And as we've all experienced, this has affected the healthcare community deeply, because the stress of having to look after so many sick people, but also the risk of actually catching COVID themselves by being in close proximity. So these self-compassion workshops and ideas are also extremely beneficial and helpful for healthcare and health and social care workers who are really on the front line in these strange times, these difficult days. So what I'd like to do today is maybe we'll just start by having a minute of just settling in and becoming present to ourselves as we listen to these thoughts and ideas about self-compassion. So I'd invite you just to close your eyes or have them half open, just taking a few deep breaths, just checking in with yourself. And really bringing yourself into the here and now. You may have been rushing to get to this webinar on time, but you're here now. Just letting go of any tension that you're holding on to, dropping your shoulders. Just tuning into your breathing and that gentle rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And maybe going a bit deeper and touching into that well of peace and silence that's right at the center of you, below your thinking and feeling, just dropping deeper and deeper into peace. So welcome, and what I'd like to do in this next hour is really take you through an introduction to self-compassion, and for you to do a little bit of reflection yourself and a couple of exercises to do with self-compassion. And really it's the main components and what's a little bit of the science behind it, and for you to have some experiences. So I do have a PowerPoint and I'm going to try and share that with you now. Hopefully you'll still see me as well. So hopefully you can see the screen and you can also see me. Again, I'm just seeing Brahma Kumari, South Africa. I'm not seeing myself. So I hope I'm down as you can still see me as the speaker.
Sarah, I have spotlighted you, so you will be seen by everyone.
Oh, okay, except me, which is probably a good thing that I'm not looking at myself, because that can be a bit distracting. So thank you. So I just thought before we even start thinking about compassion for others, I'd just like you to reflect for a minute. I mean, before we start thinking about compassion for ourselves, just to think about compassion in general. What do we mean by compassion? So just for you to think and reflect for yourself for a minute, what does compassion mean to you? So just to have a little think for just a few seconds. And even if someone's got some thoughts, if you want to put it on the chat, what does compassion mean to me? Have a little think about that. And normally if we're doing this in a workshop, we'd be dialoguing and discussing amongst ourselves. Does anyone want to share on the chat what compassion means to them? No one's feeling very chatty, it seems. Well, I think we all know that compassion is something that's talked about in all faiths around the world. And this idea of caring for others, you know, treating others as you would treat yourself, the golden rule, this idea of helping others. But the word compassion, literally when translated, is com, with, and passion in the original Greek is to suffer. So it does mean to suffer with. Oh, good. Some people are answering now. To being kind to others, caring and understanding, supporting. So we understand this sense of really when others are suffering, what is the response that we should be having to them when they're feeling like this? So we understand it relates to empathy. Somehow we can see someone is suffering. And some nice quotes about compassion. The Dalai Lama was saying, the wish that all sentient beings may be free from suffering. So that feeling of compassion is, I can see you're suffering, but I really would like to help you be free from that. And Paul Gilbert, the deep awareness of the suffering of oneself and other living beings, coupled with the wish and effort to alleviate it. And this is quite an important aspect of compassion, because it's not just empathy, it's not just me seeing that you're suffering, but I want to do something. I want to actively participate in helping you come out of that pain and suffering. And Paul Gilbert's a psychologist in the UK who's done a lot of work on this as well. We have our one of our senior teachers who passed away earlier this year, Daddy Janki. She says, compassion is not wanting sorrow to remain in another, but having the strength in the self to remove that sorrow. And that is, that's a very important point, isn't it? That you can see people are suffering, but do I have the strength to help them out of it? And sometimes we can feel overwhelmed by other people's suffering, and we're resonating so much with it that it almost renders us incapable of really being effective and helping. So that strength in the self is important. It's another nice saying from Myanmar: when the sunshine of loving kindness meets the tears of suffering, the rainbow of compassion arises. So it's very lovely, that image, isn't it? That we know we have this well of loving kindness within us. And when we see suffering on the outside, when we're seeing it in our world around us or in others, this feeling, this rainbow of compassion flows from us. So just unpacking compassion a little bit, it's useful to think about what are some of the components that are part of compassion. And this will be reflected again when we start thinking about compassion for ourselves. But the first thing is attending. So just noticing what someone else is feeling, being aware, alert, being able to pay attention to the other. And just those subtle cues that we get, someone's facial expression or their body language, you sense that something's not quite right. And obviously it may be extremely much more obvious than that they're in a situation of suffering. So understanding, trying to really understand what's causing the other's distress. And that's important because that enables you to make the correct intervention. So it requires some thinking through, appraising of the situation. Empathizing. So this sense of really not just as a cold, detached observer, but something is being triggered in you. You are having an understanding of what this person's going through, what they're feeling like. So it's a felt response. And the most obvious felt response that we show is, when we're moved to tears or something like that. And then this final step of helping, of actually being able to deliver appropriate and thoughtful action. So thinking it through, and what is the best way I can help in this situation? And I think we all know, we especially know as medical people and healthcare professionals and as friends, sometimes just being there, just being a loving, connected presence is what's needed. So the action doesn't have to be necessarily something external or something we do. Sometimes we jump to that too quickly, just to be able to be present and really just hold the other's pain and sit with them in it is what's required. And I'm sure Raksha would be aware of this. She's a palliative care physician, so especially with the dying, you know, there's a lot we can do to help their pain and suffering, but we're not going to change the inevitable conclusion. And so to be able to really be with people in those moments often takes a lot of compassion and a lot of strength. And I really wanted you to kind of tune into that energy of compassion. So I looked up in the thesaurus and saw what are the words that go with compassion. So it gives you a real feeling of the energy, doesn't it? Like tenderness and brotherly love, gentleness, mercy, warm-heartedness, understanding, kind-heartedness, tolerance, consideration, fellow feeling, sympathy. So when we start looking at these words, again, we're getting a sense of what's that energy of compassion. Really, what's when it's flowing from me to someone else, what's the feeling behind it? What's its intention and motivation? And so I'd like to ask you to participate in a little exercise, because this is really a good way of demonstrating what compassion feels like in action or in the real world. And it's got two parts. So I invite you just to sit comfortably and have your eyes closed or half open. And I'm just going to lead you in a little visualization. Hope that's okay. Just for you to see, what does compassion feel like? And then also we're going to think about ourselves in relation to that. So again, just with your eyes closed or half open, taking a few deep breaths. I'd like you to bring to mind a time when you've had a close friend or someone you loved who was suffering in some way. They may have had a misfortune or failed or felt inadequate. How did you typically respond to that person in that situation? So bring that situation to mind. A friend or someone you loved is suffering in some way. And just remind yourself, how did I respond? What words did I use? What was my tone of voice? Did I do anything? What was my posture like? How was I feeling? Did I make any gestures? So just keeping a mental note of that, of what you noticed when a friend or a loved one was suffering in some way. Now I'd like you to bring to mind a time when you were suffering in some way. you may have had a misfortune or failed or felt inadequate. Just notice, how did I respond to myself in this situation? What was my tone of voice with myself? What words did I use to speak to myself? What actions did I take? What was my posture like? How did I feel? So just observing that small exercise and asking you, and if you feel like it, again, it might be useful for some people to say in the chat, what did you notice in that exercise? And in particular, did you notice a difference between how you responded to others and how you responded to yourself? So someone saying, harder on myself. Yeah. Holding their hands. And it's a nice exercise to have a conversation with and discuss what you've noticed is the difference. But for the sake of time today, we won't do that. But just to say, they've done quite a lot of research on this. And if you notice that you were harder on yourself, don't feel alone, because about 80% of people notice that they are harder on themselves. And there are lots of reasons for that, and that we could go into at a later date. But just, it's a very common human experience. And so we are a bit hardwired to do this. Maybe it's for survival or protection or being hypervigilant about our mistakes, but it's a very common human experience. And I think about 18% of people said they were equal, that they treat others as kindly as they treat themselves, or they treat themselves as kindly as they treat others. And about 2% of people said that they were kinder to themselves than others. So that's not so common. So this is, often how we feel about others. We accept their shortcomings, we reassure them, we say, you're not so bad, don't worry. We're very much like that. But then I've made a mistake or something's gone wrong, and this negative self-talk can often come in, can't it? That I'm useless, or how did I let that happen, or berating myself in some way. So it's very good to be aware of this, really. And in fact, the whole Mindful Self-Compassion course is an 8-week course, and we go into this in some depth. But it's just to start with noticing that we all, well, most of us have this tendency to be quite hard on ourselves. So that energy of compassion that we know we really can use for other people, what's to stop us using that for ourselves? We know it's there, we just don't think about it. So that's really what we're going to explore now. So what is self-compassion then? What is self-compassion? So I think we have a reasonable idea of what compassion for others feels like, but what does compassion for the self feel like? So one of the psychologists who helped develop the Mindful Self-Compassion course, Kristen Neff, she has a very simple definition. She just said it involves responding in the same supportive and understanding way you would with a good friend when you have a difficult time, fail, or notice something you don't like about yourself. So it's really building on this idea of being your own best friend. How do you do that? So with self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness and care that we'd give to a good friend. And I think often when we look at a lot of our personal habits, we can see, and healthcare professionals are very good at this, how we can neglect ourselves. We can neglect our bodies, we can neglect our health, we can neglect our diet, and we're not even so aware that we're doing it. And yet if we see someone else treating themselves like that, we can see that it's they're not being kind to themselves. And what are the components of self-compassion? So in developing this, the science of self-compassion, she was really able to identify three major components. And the first one really is what we call self-awareness or mindfulness. And it's that noticing, being aware that we talked about in the components of compassion. So if I don't even notice what I'm feeling, if I'm not able to tune in and check in with myself to some degree, I don't even notice that I'm suffering. So that sense I've got to feel it to heal it. And this is quite deep and profound, and I think all meditation practices help us really try and get deeper into ourselves and have that honest kind of connection with ourselves about what am I really feeling here. And so then we know what to do. We know what then we're able to appraise the situation and know what tools and what resources I need to bring to my suffering to help myself out of it. But if in the first place I haven't even noticed it, then I'm not going to get very far. So this mindfulness, this balanced awareness, this self-awareness that really all types of meditation start with is very crucial. Then this idea of when I notice that I'm suffering, this ability to bring that kindness to myself. I know I have this energy of compassion, but I'm really not in the practice of giving it to myself. In fact, I probably doubt that it would work at all, but in fact it does. And they've done lots of research on this as well. And if we turn that energy of compassion to ourselves, it can have a very profound effect on our well-being, on our energy levels, on our neurotransmitters, our mental health. Lots of studies have shown how this practice of self-compassion can have a very positive effect. And then this idea of common humanity. Often when we're suffering, for whatever reason, we feel very alone, we feel very isolated. But in fact, we all suffer. It's absolutely the state of humankind that at some time or another, something bad is going to happen to us, or we have ill health or an accident, or we lose something. It is part of life. And so actually it's our suffering that connects us. And yet we tend to feel separate when we're suffering. So just really remembering that, this sense of common humanity, we're all in this same boat together, and not cutting myself off or distancing myself when I'm suffering. And why these components are helpful is because they do help balance out these tendencies we have. So we may, this balanced awareness, this self-awareness, this noticing is really, or mindfulness is really from a more detached point of view. We're just creating a little bit of space between us and our thoughts and feelings so that we have a better perspective. And this is in contrast to what we call over-identification. Now, we've all experienced that, haven't we? Where we just know our thoughts are running away with themselves, our feelings are running away with themselves, and we're just a mess, really, because we're over-identifying with this part of ourselves. So mindfulness is a really good way of, or self-awareness or meditation, a way of really just creating a bit of space. This common humanity, how that feeling that we're all in this together really does balance that feeling of isolation. And what you mentioned earlier, even in the beginning of the talk, this idea of self-judgment, you know, that we're kind of very good at being hard on ourselves and criticizing ourselves, but we're not so good at using that energy of kindness towards ourselves. So trying to bring us back into balance that way. And I wanted to explain this to you in terms of different levels that we experience ourselves. So one level is at the level of the brain. And this is a simplification, but there are 3 types of emotional regulation systems. And I think the threat-focused one is one we're all very familiar with, you know, that flight, fight, fear one. So or freeze. So that's a very good system to protect us from danger. You know, we have to either keep very still, we have to run away, or we have to protect ourselves. So it's a useful system when we're under threat. But in today's world, it's being triggered all the time by things that possibly are not a threat to our lives, but they're making us feel anxious, they're making us feel stressed, they're making us feel afraid. And just that sense of anxiety, or a big feeling of anxiety, that's becoming more and more prevalent because somehow we feel unsafe. So we're aware of the, you know, the adrenaline, the chemicals that we use, but if they're there, that are good to use when we need to act quickly and get out of danger. But if they're chronically present, they do cause a lot of ill health. And there's another system called the dopamine system, which is an interesting system. It's incentive, resource focused. And so it's the chemical that when we achieve something, you know, we get a bit of pleasure. It's a kind of our to-do list, and we achieve our to-do list and we get a little bit of dopamine and we feel quite satisfied, and that's good. But it's also very addictive, and it's associated with gambling as well. You know, why do people get caught up in gambling, in addictions, even with our mobile phones, checking our messages, going back and looking at it all the time? Dopamine's involved in that because we're getting some pleasure, but we're also getting hooked. So it's an interesting system, the dopamine system. Again, we need it to get things done, but how many of us feel that we're too busy, that we're too caught up in activity? COVID has been a very interesting phenomenon to slow people down and for them to realize that actually maybe I didn't need to do so much running around. And that space has been, for some people, quite healing and restful. And then this system, the oxytocin system, when you feel content, when you feel safe, when you feel connected to others. So this is the hormone that's triggered between mothers and babies. You know, it's the birthing hormone that connects mothers and babies very strongly, that soothing one. It's also using endorphins, feel-good hormones. So this soothing system is really what we're wanting to activate and maximize, because at the moment, I think if you ask a lot of people, and when I do talks like this and I say, think about your life now and think about how much of my day am I feeling just a bit anxious, on edge, stressed out? How much am I doing, running around, this, that, what have you? How much am I actually just, you know, feeling safe, feeling comfortable, feeling relaxed? You know, it might not be till the end of the day I finally into my, lounge chair and can stop. So you think about your life and maybe it looks more like this. So we're really asking, how do we get more into balance? And how do we grow this green circle really, so that I'm feeling much more that I'm not being dominated by the threat systems and activity systems in my life. And another aspect of this moving really from this threat response to the care response is this, just seeing how it looks, another way of describing it really. So that threat response of fight, when we turn it inwards, it becomes self-criticism. And we really want to turn that into self-kindness. This threat response of flight, running away, got to get out of here, that's isolation. And so we just run away from the situation. And we want to really turn that into common humanity, realizing that we're all in this together. And then this threat response of freezing, I'm just stuck, I can't do anything. And so that when we turn that inwards, that's what we call rumination. And we all experience that, don't we? The thought going round and round and round, you're trying to go to sleep. Why did they say that to me? I shouldn't have, blah, blah, blah. And you just can't let it go. And so really what we're trying to do then is bring in the skill of meditation, of mindfulness, where I can just say, look, thought, I've had you a million times now, and it's not really achieving anything, thinking you over and over. So I'm just going to park you so I can get some sleep. Do you mind being quiet for a while? And being able to have that little bit of distance from our own thought processes, that they're not dominating our lives, especially when they're distressing. And another way we can conceptualize this is, again, we can see it's happening, our thoughts, our experiences are creating certain neurotransmitter responses in our brains, and then the brain, those transmitters are causing other responses in our bodies, and we all know what that feels like. So what we're trying to do when we're cultivating this compassionate, mindful response is we're activating the parasympathetic system, we're being open, receptive and curious, and this has a neurotransmitter effect, a hormonal effect. The whole body is responding to that energy in a different way. Whereas we know this chronic stress, what that does to our health, what it does to our bodies, that it's maladaptive coping in a chronic situation, and it leads to a kind of breakdown of our health and well-being. So there is this kind of effect that is echoing down through the body. And another way of understanding this, which might be quite helpful, I don't know if you've heard of this book, Happiness Chemicals and How to Hack Them, that we've become to rely on taking a tablet to help us balance these neurotransmitters and chemicals. But actually there are lots of other things that will do that. And if this idea of dopamine, the reward chemical, when we complete a task, when we do self-care activities, enjoying nice food, celebrating little wins, the serotonin, the mood stabilizing one, so meditating, running, exposure to the sun, walking in nature, exercise, this really helps elevate our serotonin. And now these soothing feel-good hormones, the oxytocin and the endorphin. So there are ways of really helping boost those neurotransmitters, which is what the practice of self-compassion is doing as well. Very specifically, it's helping us bring those systems in our body back into balance without necessarily having to rely on medication. Of course, sometimes you do, and I've spent my professional life helping people figure out if they do need medication, but there are lots of things you can do for yourself before you get to that state, or as well as taking medication, that can help a lot. And another thing about self-compassion, which I think is really worth emphasizing, is this idea of the yin and yang of self-compassion, or it's called fierce compassion. Because sometimes when you think about, people think about self-compassion, they think, oh, that's a bit wishy-washy, you know, you're being a bit soft and woolly, and does it mean just being easy on yourself? Go on, have that ice cream, or go on, have another piece of chocolate. Oh, I can't be bothered getting up and doing that. You know, that's being kind to yourself. But in fact, there is also this aspect of what's called the yang of self-compassion. So it's really, compassion wants to do what's best for you in the long run. So it's different to self-indulgence. You know, self-care, what is self-care ultimately? And so this feeling of protecting yourself, providing for yourself, motivating yourself, there's a kind of an energy there, which, you know, sometimes in the Indian philosophy, we call that Shakti, you know, that sort of power, good power. So it's, whereas Yang, the Yin is the kind of soothing, comforting, validating yourself. And a lot of the practices can help you do that. But it's not, you're not just being a pushover. And I think it's really important to understand that compassion involves both these sides of things, and taking the perspective where we really see what is the best thing for this situation, what's the best thing for me. Not just a short-term indulgence, but in the long run, what is real self-care and self-nurture. And another interesting thing I meant to mention with this thing of self-criticism, when they've done some brain studies which show that self-criticism triggers the same part in your brain, in your amygdala, that any external threat would. So when you're criticizing yourself, you're literally stressing yourself out. So that in and of itself is increasing your adrenaline and your stress hormones. And so what we're really aiming to do in the self-compassionate practices and deepening our understanding of that is you're turning from being that harsh inner critic, which sometimes we feel we need to keep ourselves on track, or you know, make sure we're behaving properly, more to being like a coach, a motivated coach. And I realized in the last few years or so, I thought, gosh, I've really neglected my body. I haven't given it the exercise that it really needs, especially as I'm getting older. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get a personal trainer. I'd been very wary of that, you know, thinking, oh, I'm not a gym person and I don't like doing exercise. But what I really appreciated when I got the personal trainer was actually how motivating they were. You know, they would never say, oh, you're rubbish at that exercise, or, you know, no, you do that again, that was terrible. It's very much that sense of being a coach. Great, you can do it, come on. And really learning how to be that for yourself, you know, and that kind of energy actually gets more done. You will achieve more with that motivating with love than this kind of harsh inner critic. So again, this yang thing of motivating myself with love and support and self-respect is much more powerful motivator than fear or criticism. And really, when you look at this aspect of this energy of love, what's also deeply important, and what I find very true for myself, is that compassion, if we think compassion is really our true nature of love, when we understand ourselves as spiritual beings and souls, and we know that deep down inside, I might have these layers of other things on top of me, but deep down inside at my core, there really is this center of love, this center of peace, this center of happiness. And so it's just my true nature of love is emerging when it sees suffering, and then compassion arises. And so that feeling of love is very natural to us as spiritual beings. We're really expressing our true selves. And we kind of know that the anger, the irritation, different layers of things, that's not really how we want to be. We may have been triggered to respond in those ways. But when we're being compassionate, when we're showing loving kindness, we are expressing our true spiritual nature. And so that's very powerful, that's very authentic, that's very real for us and for those around us when they feel it. That's why we respond to it, because there is truth in there. So I think this is a very profound truth about self-compassion, which is why we all say we recognize how important it is and how necessary it is in the world, but also to recognize that if it is my true nature and I can give it to other people, I also can give it to myself. I just have to remember to do it, and I also need to probably practice doing it intentionally. And it might feel a little bit false or a bit artificial when I first do it, but actually if I keep doing it, it becomes more of a habit. And that habit of going to the negative gets less as I intentionally grow that habit of being kind to myself when I notice I'm suffering. So that's what I'd like to do with you now, is another exercise of showing you how can I, when I notice I'm suffering, be kind to myself. And these are very practical tools. And so when we think about when we were with the person who was suffering, what did we do? How did we respond to them? What are our tools of compassion? How do we demonstrate that in the external world? So things like, I'm sure you all probably did this, you may have given them a hug. You may have put your arm around them, absolutely. You may have said, there, it's okay. Your tone of voice will have been gentle and kind. Your words will have been soothing. You may be, with your facial expression, you would have been expressing love or kindness. And so these are what are called universal triggers of compassion. So soothing touch, gentle focalization, even physical warmth and a smile. And so I'm going to show you how you can use this, this trigger of compassion on yourself when you notice you're suffering. So we're going to start with an exercise called soothing touch. And then I'm going to go from that exercise into another one called a self-compassion break, so that you can use your soothing touch when you notice that you're suffering. So in the soothing touch exercise, I'm just going to get you to explore for yourself what soothing touch works for you. And you may already have a habit that you haven't even noticed. I realized when I started doing this that often if I was feeling a bit anxious, I would do this with my thumbs. And actually I was soothing myself just by rotating my thumbs. You might want to hold your own hand or give yourself a hug. Excuse me. Or what's a very common one that works is just putting your hand on your heart. So we'll go through that now. And I want you to notice while we're doing that, what actions work for you? What do you feel really connects you to yourself as we're doing it? And then we'll go on to do the self-compassion break exercise. I'll just run them one into the other. Sorry, I'll just make sure I've got my notes. Yeah, good. Okay, so I'd like you to once again have your eyes closed or half open, taking a few deep breaths. And just start by having one hand holding the other hand. And you could even imagine that you were holding the hand of a best friend. But that feeling of support and comfort, just holding your own hand. Or even one hand just gently rubbing the other, gently stroking the other hand. So there's that energy of there, it's okay. Maybe just stroking your arms. Or giving yourself a little hug. You know, that energy of support and kindness. Now putting one hand on your heart. And really feeling that energy of love and support and tenderness coming through your own hand and into your heart. You can put your other hand on top of that as well to make it feel extra strong. Or you might just like to stroke your chest, or even just holding your hands in your lap, supportively holding your tummy in a way that feels like I'm supporting myself. And just then reflect, which of those actions did you find most soothing or supportive? And bear that in mind. And now I'd like you to bring to mind a situation in your life that is difficult right now, that might be causing you stress. It could be a health problem or a relationship problem or a work problem, or perhaps even a friend who's struggling. Just choose a problem in the mild to moderate range, not something that's overwhelming. And just as you think about that problem, noticing how's your body feeling? How are you feeling as you think about that problem? Do you feel a particular place of tension or upset? Where do you feel it most? We often all have places, our favorite places to put our anxieties and stresses. Might be my jaw or my shoulders, my tummy. And then just saying to myself, acknowledging, validating, this is a moment of suffering. See if you have your own words. It can be this is a moment of suffering, or it might just be I'm feeling uncomfortable, I feel tense, I'm stressed, this hurts, I'm upset. What makes it real for you that you're validating and acknowledging your own suffering and your own pain? And then just acknowledging that actually we all suffer. We're all in this boat of suffering together, and that's our common humanity. And so saying to myself, I'm not alone in this suffering. Others are suffering too. This is part of life. This is how it feels when a person struggles in this way. And then finally, putting your hand over your heart or whatever was your favorite soothing touch place. And just saying to yourself, because I'm suffering, may I give myself kindness. May I be kind to myself. Again, you might have your own words for this. Like, this is hard. It's hard that I have to go through this. It's tough. May I be friendly towards myself. May I give myself the love and comfort that I need right now, because it is tough. May I accept myself as I am. Or may I live in love. See what words come up for you. What words help you to really go into that energy of compassion for yourself. And sometimes if this is hard, just think if a dear friend was going through the same thing, what would you say to them? What words of comfort or support would you share with them? So, this is a self-compassion break, and actually it's very effective. I've found that I'm noticing that my husband and I are about to get into an argument. I do this little exercise with myself just to really not get caught up in that energy. And other times you might have just missed the bus by 2 seconds, or something's gone on in your life and you can feel yourself, no, this is a moment of suffering. May I be kind to myself because I'm suffering. It's a very good practice, and you can do it really quite quickly and on the spot. But of course, this energy of compassion you can build up through meditation practice, through lots of meditation practices. And the more you do that, the easier it is to access it quickly as well. So again, it's a bit like exercise. The more you exercise that compassion muscle for others, but for yourself in particular, and that's where you need to start. Because really, the more kindness and compassion you can feel for yourself, then it will naturally flow to others, because you really learnt it from the inside out. So that's what I wanted to share with you today by way of introduction to this topic. And I think now, if Raksha, I think if you had any questions, or if people had any questions, we would go to that now.
So thank you, Sarah, for that amazing presentation. I can see from the comments lots of insights. Just this short presentation making many aware of to what extent they're quite harsh on themselves, quite self-critical, and just the first exercise itself, making many participants aware of how hard they are on themselves, but how sweet they may be with others. And somebody said it's so strange, but so this first aspect of awareness, so important. And then that common humanity, to understand I'm not alone, and then to practice that loving kindness to the self. I remember last year you had done this retreat in Mount Abu, and you had given us a little beautiful gem at the end of the retreat. And over the next few days, whilst I was at our headquarters, I would just gently soothe this, touch this stone, and remind myself whenever I had a harsh voice towards myself that I practice loving kindness towards myself. And a simple practice, but it just restored that love that one unconditionally wants to give to the world, but starting with the self. And so important to develop that capacity of self-love so that I can then have that capacity to love in an unlimited way and to continue to give that love. I know with COVID in South Africa, many are sharing, especially about moral injury, and everyone has to take care. The healthcare workers having to take care, but what are they doing to take care of themselves? Because if I don't take care of myself, how much can I then take care of others? And so, in the comment and a question that's come up in the group is from one of the participants today, saying, I need to be strong and keep my head up high for my children's sake, although I am breaking in my heart. So I guess just a very heartfelt statement there of how to continue to be there and to have that compassion for others when inside I myself am struggling. So any thoughts or comments on that, or anything you want to share with regard to that?
I think I think, yeah, Raksha, maybe you need to turn your mic off when I'm speaking, otherwise it's echoing back in. It's a very good question, isn't it? You know, when we're there to support others, how much do we show? And I think there is an interesting balance, because there's been a lot of work done now on vulnerability, and a lot of work done, someone called Brené Brown has done a lot of work on vulnerability in leadership as well. And a lot of us, I mean, I'm sure I was like this myself as a consultant and in the hospital, is that you tend to soldier on and be so brave that people don't really have an idea of what you're going through. And maybe even you don't know what you're going through. And in a way, if you reveal a bit more of what you're going through, other people can help you, but also it shows them that, you know, you're human as well, you're not superhuman. And I think it was the end of my second self-compassion, when I was training to be a self-compassion teacher, and they do a thing at the end of it going around, and you'll share 3 words from what you've learned from the course. And my 3 words were vulnerability is strength, because I began to really see how, if I could be with my own vulnerability and learn how to care for myself in that vulnerability, how that made me stronger. So even though we have to be strong for others, I think if we're hiding our vulnerability from ourselves, we're not going to be able to heal it or be stronger. So there is something about being who we are and being real and not being superwoman or what have you, that allows others to help us, but also allows us to really learn what is the best way of supporting and resourcing myself. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's been my experience and my learning.
So thank you. So being vulnerable enough to be real and in touch with my feelings, so that I can then work from that authentic space to support the environment that I'm within. So thank you for that. And then another question, what do you do when you are in the company of others and they intimidate you with their fears?
Again, a very good question. And again, I think Raksha would agree, as a healthcare professional, we're we're very aware of that. And for me personally, it's having a spiritual perspective has helped enormously. And thinking about, well, what are our fears based on? What's anyone's fears based on? And, you know, ultimately, it's going to be a fear of death or a fear of pain or a fear of loss. And whilst they're real fears, I think the more spiritually mature you are and the more spiritually experienced, when you understand that the energy of the soul continues and the energy of the soul is eternal, it gives you a very different perspective. And so you put your fears into your fears become far less, because you realize what you imagined isn't exactly true. And of course, energy is very contagious. And so if you have people around you who are very caught up in their own fears, it's even more important that you are giving a different kind of energy. So it does require, I think, an understanding of boundaries. And I think that's where fierce compassion comes in, that this is your situation and your fears. And whilst I'm here to help and support you, I don't want to catch your fears, because that's actually going to immobilize me. That's going to bring me sort of to the same level as you, which is not going to be very helpful. So again, it's that practice of keeping your own energy as clear and as calm and as sort of stable. Equanimity is a lovely word, isn't it? That how can I keep myself stable? So that requires, ultimately, in the long run, there's quite a lot of personal development in all I've just said, because it's around knowing who I am, knowing what my energy is, knowing where the boundaries are, and managing my own fears, facing my own fears, having worked through that a bit myself, so that I'm not picking up on the contagion. I'm not resonating with their fear, because I know my understanding and my perspective is different. But again, the more you practice meditation regularly, or you have a way of keeping that positive energy or that stable, calm energy with you, then you'll find it easier not to be so affected by those around you. And sometimes if it's very toxic, or they're really full of fear and you don't have to be there, the best thing is to walk away or leave the situation. If you have to be there because you're responsible or you're a professional, then you need to really learn ways of managing those feelings and not hiding from them, but working with them. And I think my own practice of meditation and my own development of spiritual understandings of things has really helped me enormously in that journey.
Thank you. As you mentioned, quite a deep answer, but that has come with your deep practice of spirituality and over time learning how to work with these situations. But that sharing of be a higher energy in the environment to support and to learn ways of working with the energy that's in your atmosphere. And so thank you for that. And then there's two more questions. What is the fine line between self-care and self-indulgence? Because self-indulgence can make one feel stuck.
Well, I think this fine line is one that each of us kind of need to discover on our own, isn't it? It's part of our own journeys, and experimenting, as you say, if you're doing something, and ultimately the intention and the motivation of self-compassion is to care for you and what's best for you. And there's an exercise we do in this called the inner compassionate self, and you notice that inner compassionate voice is one that really wants the best for you and in the long run. And so it's a bit like, you know, the mother who's saying, eat your carrots, you know, you can't go straight to dessert or something. So it's kind of patient and it's in for the long haul. And I guess we'll know from our own experience, as you said, if you feel very stuck, then possibly you've erred on the side of self-indulgence, and that feeling itself will motivate you to think, well, maybe I should be doing something differently here. And of course, that doesn't mean being like a harsh disciplinarian with yourself. You know, it's that sense, isn't it? Is this an occasional aberration? Is this an occasional indulgence? And that's okay? Or is it something that's really taking hold and it's become such a strong habit that it's detrimental to my health and well-being? So I think we learn through trial and error, experimentation, but it's been interesting. It's been an interesting journey for me, really practicing with that energy of self-compassion and seeing how I can use it to change my behaviors. For instance, having more exercise and really allowing myself to do that more intensively and more routinely. Not easy, but it was like my self-compassionate voice was saying, you know, you need to do this and it's good for you. So, you know, give it a go. But if, you know, I missed it, or if, you know, sometimes I didn't feel like doing it or whatever, that's all part of the journey. So, but I think, you know, it's finding that line is your journey, seeing where you're caring for yourself truly, real self-care, and where what you're doing, and you probably know it deep down, is somewhat self-destructive or not constructive. So Raksha, anything else?
Another question. It is very easy to isolate yourself as you feel that no one understands your pain. How do you work on not isolating yourself?
Well, I think in your conversations with people, I mean, I notice that I'm like this in a sense that I'm much more comfortable now about fessing up about my mistakes or how I'm really feeling. I don't have this need so much to present this image of being the perfect person. And I think that tends to alienate people. So I think sharing your common humanity, just being able to be more open with others about what you're feeling, what you're going through, being honest is a good way to start, because I think we're often all walking around with these masks on of, you know, our ideal selves that we think we should be projecting to everyone else. But in fact, inside we're feeling something different. And I feel the energy to maintain that gap of what I feel on the inside and what I'm trying to project on the outside is what makes us tired often, or makes us depressed. And the power of just really being who you are. And I think often, you know, if people can perceive that I'm not accepting myself, then they might have a question mark. But if they can see that I know I'm like this, or I've done this, and I can be quite open and honest about how I'm feeling or the mistakes I've made, it's a kind of humility, I feel, that they're not going to question it then either. They're not going to, you know, the people you question or you look at are the ones that you kind of know they're hiding something from themselves, or there's something else going on, but they're just pretending everything's fine. That's when you question. It's the gap that you question. But I think if you're really being yourself and open, and then you'll find that others will, if they feel safe and comfortable because you're being honest and yourself, then they'll open up and say, actually, yeah, I feel like that too. And I think just knowing that actually we're all, you know, we all do feel like that. It's a kind of the world's worst kept secret.
So thank you. I see a comment as well. Once we accept ourselves for who we are, we will stop isolating ourselves.
Lovely.
So, yeah. So many beautiful aspects, but a lot from what you shared, I think, those three words that you mentioned from your second training, this vulnerability came up quite a bit, and the importance of allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to be real, that develops that patience and love and care for the self as well, from what I could hear, from what you were sharing. And I really loved this whole aspect of being a motivator and a coach for yourself with love. And so, and your many beautiful exercises, very real exercises of how when we're in the world, how we grow and we want to enfold and hold others when they're going through suffering. And yet, when we are going through suffering, what is my response? And what should my response be? And how can I develop that response so it develops a most beautiful, powerful character that has great capacity? And I can only grow my capacity if I develop that self-love, self-care, that self-compassion. And so to allow oneself to be aware, be mindful, and to acknowledge that suffering, and then to practice that loving kindness, that self-kindness towards the self. And so very simple, real, powerful tools that you've shared with us. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we would love for you to close this question and answer session. Many beautiful comments coming up. Thank you for your profound, enriching presentation. Thank you for this compassionate talk. We really appreciate it. So I thought it would be wonderful if we could close this presentation with a meditation before we share thanks and some follow-up sessions that the Brahma Kumaris will be hosting. So thank you, Sarah. If you could lead us into a reflection meditation.
And before I finish with the meditation, I remembered I had a poem that I'd like to read. So
Yes.
I'll read the poem and then I'll go into the meditation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all for your attention. I hope you've found it useful, and thank you for asking me to share my own personal insights and knowledge. It's been a privilege. Thank you. So this poem is called, I think, turn off your mics.
Yes.
This poem is called My Balm. It's by Jane O'Shea. I close my eyes and sigh, and here I am, lying in the hammock of my heart, moving gently with the soft air of my breath. When I fall from my head past my words, I'm caught lovingly by the hammock of my heart and rocked to its rhythmic beat. It is my peace, my rest, my quiet, cradled in the hammock of my heart. It is constant. It is safe to be held in the hammock of my heart. No place to go, nothing to do, nobody to please. It is my altar, my blessing, my balm, here in the hammock of my heart. And so I invite you just to enter into the hammock of your heart. Just taking a few deep breaths. Firstly, noticing any noises in your environment. And then coming closer in and just noticing, am I holding on to any tension in my body? And letting it go. Letting my shoulders drop, my arms relax, my face relax. And then coming closer in and just noticing that rhythm of my own breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. And as I breathe in the energy of love and compassion. And as I breathe out, I just let go of any tension, any stress, any anxiety. Breathing in compassion, breathing out tension. And then as I go deeper still, I may notice certain thoughts and feelings arising. And I just watch them as if on the bank of a river and they're just flowing past. As I drop deeper and deeper into my own inner stillness, into the hammock of my heart, of the love and kindness that is there. Knowing that this is my true nature, my real self. Here at the core of my being, there is the energy of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So really, really opening up our hearts and capacities. Thank you so much for this very insightful presentation and this whole aspect of having that mindfulness, the awareness. I have to feel it to heal it. And then this practicing self-kindness to treat myself as I would a dear friend. And then that common humanity. I am not alone. I am not separate. And so thank you once again. And we look forward to having you in South Africa. I know there was the aim to come to South Africa and to do some retreats with us. And so if all of you have registered, I'm sure we will have Sarah in South Africa for a live retreat. And so, yes, lots of love to you out there in the UK, and we look forward to having you with us one day here. Thank you.
I hope so too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to each one of you. There's about 77 on YouTube that joined, and 24 of us on Zoom. And so thank you, each one of you, for practicing self-compassion and setting aside this 1.5 hours to be with us. And I see many thoughts of thanks and blessings coming on through on the chat. So yes, thank you for taking the time out over the last 1.5 hours to be with us. And there are many other programs, sessions, seminars that are run on a daily basis by the Brahma Kumaris. And you're most welcome to join and register so that you have access to all these free self-development courses. I'll project some upcoming talks and workshops. And so we'll just project that now. But in the mornings, we have sessions from 8 to 8:30. And the next session that would start is on Tuesday, and it's called Healing Heart and Soul. So half an hour slots, 8 to 8:30, so that one can journey with a group, taking a certain aspect for the day and reflecting and meditating on that and holding that thought for the entire day. We have meditation courses, weekly sessions by guests from across the globe, thanks to our online initiatives. And for healthcare workers especially, we have a workshop on the 19th of September called Restoring Your Spirits, because there is a feeling that people need to rebuild themselves after the current crisis that many have been journeying through, that has led to quite a bit of compassion fatigue and burnout. And so you're welcome to join us on the 19th of September from 3 to 5. But if you can look at our website, and that is www.brahmakumaris.org.za, you will be able to access our events on a regular basis. And as Sarah has shared her time with us, we have many such guest speakers who are offering their time and energy and their personal experience with us at this very important time of self-development as we journey into ourselves to grow our power and ability to respond to the time and to the challenges that we have to face. So thank you, each one of you, and have a wonderful evening and weekend. And we'll sign off now. Thanks again, Sarah, and lots of love to everyone in the UK.
Thank you, Raksha. And also just to remind people of the app we developed at the Janki Foundation, the Happy Dote.
Yes. So there's also many beautiful apps, but especially for healthcare workers, because I think this topic is quite relevant for you. The Janki Foundation has developed an app called Happy Dote, and you can download it on Apple or Android, and there's the app there. So it's a beautiful app with guided meditations, also meeting your mood. So if you're angry, you can click on one. If you're tired, if you're feeling frustrated or burnt out, and so you can scan these two to download Happy Dote. So that's for the Apple and for the Android.
Thank you.
And so wonderful. And for some of you, there's also another app called B Zone, also with a mood clinic. So supportive tools to help you on your journey to wholeness and to support your journey of self-compassion. So thanks for sharing that, Sarah. Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, dear Sarah. Thank you very much. Many blessings.
Breathe on me, breath of life. Shake the dust from the stars tonight. Light a candle in my name. Together maybe we could learn to change. The gift of silver becomes the gift of gold. The deepest secrets will unfold. The night is shattered by the rising sun, and all the earth will sing the same song. Breathe on me, breath of love. Wrap the broken pieces of this heart. Find the voices, make them still, and hold the shadows back and drink your fill. I'm tired of fighting words stored in my head, and all the dreams we've lived unsaid. The sun is rising, now it won't be long till all the earth will sing the same song. Breathe on me, breath of life, and shake the dust from the stars tonight. Light a candle, say my name. Together